Welcome to another episode of Tandaza Mkeka, and with me here today is Everita Kamau and Grace Kinuthia, a psychologist. And today we're going to be tackling the, the elephant in the African room, which is black tax. And we're also going to be looking at generational trauma and what that looks like in terms of things like the Superwoman syndrome and parentification and what those actually mean for firstborn daughters in African families. And we're going to try and tackle some of the challenges and opportunities. I'm assuming they're going to be opportunities as well. So that we can, just hear what that looks like. And Everita is here to represent an African firstborn daughter. And Grace is here to just basically answer those hard questions around what generational trauma looks like. And do you know what a superwoman syndrome is? And if that's what that looks like, can you let us know if it's an actual thing? Ama we just hear these things from our TikTok therapists, which I always say I refer to. So I'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself so that the people who are listening can hear and understand where you're from and why you're here. So do you want...
She can go first.
Wow. Okay, firstborn daughter, let's go.
All right, thanks. My name is Everita Kamau. And like you said, I'm a firstborn daughter. I'm a firstborn daughter of 5. And sometimes I'm called a deputy mom in our family.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Grace Kinuthia. I'm a psychologist by profession. Yeah, I'm also a firstborn, by the way.
You're also a firstborn. Firstborn African daughter. Yes.
Of deputy parent of 3.
Of 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So before we even start with the questions, my first question usually is, are you a firstborn? Like how many kids are you in your family?
We're 5. So I'm a firstborn of 5.
So is there an age gap what's the age gap between you and the lastborn?
Me and the lastborn is 14 years, I think, or 15.
So actually
16.
Mom.
Something like 16 years, deputy man, because sometimes he feels like my firstborn.
Yeah, because 16 feels...
By the time he was born, it was basically my child, technically.
Yeah, because you're in high school at that time?
Yeah, I was in high school. I was in high school, at that point.
What about you?
Firstborn of 3. I include myself in there because I'm also parenting myself. Yeah, but literally I have a sister and a brother.
Yeah. So what's the
age gap? It could be 7 plus 2 because then they're so close. So last one is a bit 9. Yeah.
Okay. So before we even start talking about black tax, I know you're smiling. One of the questions we had in terms of what firstborn, this firstborn issue that I've been hearing about, I'm not going to say experiencing, but hearing about, because I'm also a firstborn. And one of the things that I have been seeing in terms of how let me stop saying African, just generationally, our parents parented us as firstborn, we were their first kids. But there's such a big distinction, and tell me if this is true in your families, both of you. There's such a big distinction between how your parents parented you as the firstborn and the lastborn. That's why I was asking about the gap in between. So do you think, have you experienced that?
I would say yes. There's definitely a world of a difference between how I was parented and how the baby in the family was parented. For me, it was rules. And then by the time the last one came, it was a whole, in fact, even with my siblings, it was a whole different world. I keep laughing because for me, going out was a taboo completely. You were not going anywhere.
Explain to the listeners what going out means.
As in even to go out to a club. It was taboo. It was unheard of. You were never going to do this. Then my siblings come along, and one day I think I'd even moved out of home, and they were talking and they're telling me how my dad dropped them carnival to go and watch Papa Wemba.
Wow.
I was like, what do you mean? How is that even a possibility? What world are you guys living in? Because like the same father or a different one. But it was that much of a difference that I couldn't go out. But by the time my siblings were getting there, my dad was picking them up from clubs. I'm like, there's something is not adding up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this time you're living by yourself.
This time I'm living
You're
by
just
myself.
coming to home, like you're coming home to visit.
To visit.
And was there...
I was like, what do you mean? What happened to my parents? Whose parents? Who are these people you people are calling parents? Because I'm like, that could never happen.
Yeah.
I was beaten blue black because I thought I could sneak out and go to a club. Then same parents are coming to pick you up from the club.
Exactly.
Let's
talk about that actually, because the beatings that we received when we were kids. Do you have kids as well?
Yes,
right?
I do. I have two.
Two.
Yes.
So how are your parents with your kids?
I was almost beaten once by my father because I beat my daughter. He was like, what do you mean? You can't beat her. So I'm looking at him like, what do you mean I can't? I'm punishing her. I'm trying to teach her lesson. He was like, please.
Not my grandchildren.
Not my grandchildren.
Why do you think that happens?
Considering I'm a parent too, I can say whatever she's talking about, and at times I'm thinking, oh my god, these people just changed. But maybe to give a perspective of personal experience, mine was the other way around. I was given permission to go out. Our last one was never ever like, don't step out. So I think from her, she used to be like, what do you mean? Who is she? Like in the last weekend, do the whole thing. But I think mostly I like to consider firstborns as the experimental parents. And like kids, parenting doesn't have a manual, so these people are new to this whole thing, and maybe hardly are firstborns. Like if you ask the elder parents, they'll ask you, how did you get married? I realized I was pregnant, so I had to marry you. Single parenting was a taboo. So you find that in most scenarios, the firstborns come with a lot of trauma, because maybe some parents are also angry. Even when you've been beaten up, you're not being beaten up because it's you. In some scenarios, you've had like, you're still mad because if it was not for you, the firstborn, I wouldn't have ended up in this marriage. If it's not for you, the firstborn, maybe I would have had a way out. So you find at times parents have their own baggage. Then also parents are parenting us the way they were parented.
True.
So for them, they grew up knowing the only way to be straight like us, but they were not straight. They'd actually, if you look at them, you're like, hey, really? So the only way for you not to be maybe a bad child, you have to be beaten up. And for them, conversation was disrespectful. So you find that there's no day your parents sat you down to ask you for your opinion, because but also when you look at it psychologically, it's ego, power play. For me to feel powerful, especially for our mothers, because they didn't have a say most of the time, in the society, what's the only way for her to feel powerful is I say this and this and this. So they're giving us instructions. So your opinion doesn't matter. So you become a lesser human being. So at times it's more what you'd call generational trauma because of where they're coming from, and they have to pass it now down. But then I think maybe because of experiences, how they parent, and then they have learned with you, and then they figured out just because you were beating her up, probably you didn't just stand up.
Tell me more about generational trauma, because I have a theory, and I don't know. And again, this is why we invite experts so that they can validate or invalidate on these things that we're saying. I have a theory. Most of us, I'd assume, most of us were born in the 80s and 90s. Our parents came from the 70s. 60s and 70s, flower babies. You remember that time when, because if you see most of our parents, like older, if you have like parents who have older siblings, their photos, they're wearing minis, they have afros, they look so happy. So during that period, my theory is that during that period, it was like a flower, wild, time, carefree, and then AIDS hit. And so now our parents born in the 60s and the 70s to parent us in the 80s and 90s went through a pandemic. They went through the AIDS epidemic, and where everything was like, just say no, abstinence. And that's how they grew up. Because I'm assuming the kids who are born in the pandemic right now, during that period where we were like, you can't touch this, you can't touch that. There has to be some sort of trauma that these kids will, maybe not, but like there has to be some sort of something that will come out of it. And they say us millennials have gone through AIDS, have gone through COVID, have gone through what throughout the years, and we can't be okay.
Yeah,
so my theory is our parents can't be okay because they went through that whole stigma.
Stigma of AIDS.
I remember when I was younger, we used to shun people. Like our parents would be like, usiongeleshe huyo akona AIDS. Usikunywe na hiyo kikombe iko na AIDS. You know, ule akona AIDS. It was such a big thing for them, but because you are young, you don't understand any of it. None of us young people had AIDS. So for us, it wasn't a reality, but for them it was. So I think they carried that. And that's my theory. I could be wrong because my grandparents, in as much as they were strict, there were things that my mother carried with her, some sort of trauma. And I don't know if you can call it generational from her parents or also contextually or environmentally, I don't know what you'd call that they carried to us. Because I feel like we are less, we don't parent the way our parents do.
Right. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I feel like for me, it's a good thing. I don't know.
I think it can be both. It can be both a good and a bad thing that we don't parent the same way our parents parented, because I mean, really, the beatings we endured. And it was like your parents are trying to kill you every day. It's like I didn't manage yesterday, so I'm going to try again today. I'm like, it was tiring being beaten. Okay. But then also the negative is that then we go to the other extreme where we
gentle parent,
too gentle. That the child does not have a concept of no and boundaries and respecting people, spaces. You know how a child can visit you and you look at them and you're like, if this one was mine. But the mother is just, baby, daddy, don't do that, daddy. Like, no. Also that becomes a different kind of problem.
Yeah.
Okay. My question would be, now, other than, when you look at it as an individual, I turned out okay because I was beaten up. When you look at your peers, do you think they turned out okay? In the dating scene at the workplace, do you think those people turned out okay?
No, I don't think we are.
I don't think we're okay.
I also don't think we're okay.
I don't think we're okay. Honestly, we are not fine.
We are not fine.
So it means the beating didn't work. When you look at people who are going in for therapy boundaries, lack of boundaries. I don't know, my partner at the workplace, the boss is shouting, etc. Us who are beaten up, who is being disrespectful. Us who were beaten up. Yeah. So ideally, what it did, I think it shamed us. There's something called the culture of shame, blame, game, guilt, and the whole cycle. What it did is just put us in a box. Yeah. We became fearful of doing things. Necessary doesn't mean if we're given the opportunity, we can't do it. So you find that now because nobody's there to beat these adults. Oh my God. Yeah. They're beating each other. They're rude to each other. Because at times you'll find adults, they're bullying each other even in the office places and even at home.
So you're saying these people who are not beaten up are worse in the work, or you're saying us?
We were beaten up, but what are we doing as adults? Like domestic violence.
Oh, that's what you mean.
Bullies.
Okay.
Yeah, we are everything.
I think we're a very violent generation.
Yes.
Simply because we were brought up in violence. I also think what happened with us is that our parents, in many instances, weren't parented. Why? Because the fight for independence happened when a lot of them were young. Yeah. A lot of their parents were taken away. They were brought up by their siblings. They watched their parents being beaten up by the colonialists. So that violence cycle has just kept going. So we've come up being very violent. We were beaten. Violence was a solution for everything.
Yeah.
Which is what I think a lot of us have carried forward. So we respond with violence to a lot of things.
And isn't that what generational trauma is? Or what is the definition?
It is, because we're passing on. But something else now I've noticed over time, when you look at our parents, when you look at their parents, they lived in an era we call survival mode. These people have survived. If you like to learn, most people retiring and starting new careers. These people grew up being told a woman can't be, a woman can be, 1, 2, 3. These people, you never had an opinion of what you liked. For the longest time, I thought my favorite color is blue, simply because my mom loved blue, and everything she ever got me was blue. So ideally, as an adult, when I got to pick my own taste, I've never gotten myself anything that's blue. I would never actually think I want anything that's blue. So you find that I think the generations have been on survival mode. So when it comes to maybe independence, these people didn't, absent parenting, the society, etc. And now they have, then again in the era whereby most women now who would call our mothers got into the era where independence, women empowerment.
So you're talking about women empowerment, and let's pick up on that because I read while I was doing my research about how do we talk about black tax, how we talk about, firstborn daughters, and does that also come into the workplace? You mentioned like talking about what it looks like in the workplace, and I read about this Black Superwoman syndrome, which is a phenomenon of Black women constantly pushing themselves to do it all for everyone at their own expense. And this behavior is often learned at a young age from female authority figures. So you have alpha woman matriarch who does it all in the home, but then you take that behavior because you saw your mom doing it. You yourself, you go back into the workplace and you're like, and also because we can't say no. I don't know if it's everyone, but millennials find it so hard to say no to extra work, doing things, staying on in the office. You always want to push yourself. This behavior is often learned at a young age from female authority figures in the family, such as mothers, grandmothers, or aunts. Black girls who are exposed to this behavior often replicate it in adulthood because they don't want to disappoint others and struggle with feelings of guilt when they say no.
Okay. So that goes back to women empowerment. So the thing about, I was saying women empowerment, our parents grew up in the part whereby it was, they grew up seeing their parents, their mothers abused most of the time, or their aunts or grandmas, because one, this woman never worked, she didn't have money, her role was domestic or trying to bring up etc. And even if they did, there was a sense of, the man says you have to respect your husband or you have to respect your grandparent or whatever that is. So most women really got to a point, I have to work hard so that just in case this person tries to hit me, I have my money, I can run away. What does that now go back to the daughter? It's like, you know what? A woman needs her own money. A woman needs 1, 2, 3. And now we grow up saying either directly or indirectly learning that, my mom is able to do this and this because she has her own money. My mom, even if whoever is around us, even if we were abandoned as kids, my mom managed because she had a job. So it goes down and down. Then also goes back to what you were talking about, HIV and AIDS. So we've grown up as women, you grow up again with the fear of a man can do this to you, or 1, 2, 3, and you can get HIV and AIDS. And I've never had a conversation where men were told you can get HIV and AIDS. It's more of the woman. So what the woman does is she's learning to stand up for herself. And for the longest time, women empowerment went ahead. But I also think it disempowered most people at some point, because we're living in a point of we have to prove ourselves. We're fighting secondary battles of our parents that who abused you? Nobody, but you live in whatever get abused. Who, did something bad to you and you were told something bad is going to happen if you don't get money. It's good for a woman to, to stand her ground and have 1, 2, 3. But most of the time, we find most people have lived out of other people's experiences. So you've seen a woman doing 1, 2, 3 there, and you're like, I want to be her. Why did she become that way? We don't get to know the background story. So for us, most of the time, we are rushing to be something like, oh, I see you look good, I want to have all this, but I don't know why you ended up like this. So for me, I want to be empowered like you. But then again, you say you're fighting your battles. So when I pick you, I pick in your battles and etc. So that then goes and becomes a cycle. So then again, it's something now, especially for the Black woman, though it's universal, we lack being feminine. Most women don't know how to be feminine in the African context. We don't even know how to ask for help. Why? Because if I ask for help, and interestingly enough, we're having this conversation this week with my cousin, she's telling me, I don't know how to ask for help. And even if you ask for help, you end up over-explaining. You see, like, justifying why you need 1, 2, 3. But, it's, women were meant to sit back, relax. supported.
Not the African woman. I don't.
But that's why we get it wrong.
The African woman has never been told to sit back and relax.
But you know, that's actually
the other
normal. And if you get rest, because I remember even on a personal experience, I'm self-employed, but I think maybe until a month ago, I think even secretly my mom is looking for jobs for me because I'm not employed. And they feel like you have to work. If you don't work, there's a panic. If you're not maybe doing the 8 to 5, looking at 1 to 3, if you're not getting out of the house early in the morning, looking in a certain way, dressing up in a certain way. But that's not my trauma. It's your trauma because in your era, if you didn't wake up in the morning to go to work and your husband decided or whoever left you, your kids were going to starve. But it's a different generation. People are working online. People are doing different things.
And that thing of being told you have to wake up early because that's the only way to get to but it catches the worm. It's the only path to success. I'm like, crying out loud, no. Why do I have to wake up at 5 a.m. all the time?
My grandmother used to never like to see someone sitting.
Sitting,
Because she'd be like, why are you sitting? There are other so many things that you can do. So actually when I thought about it, and I come from I told you I'm a feminist, and one of the principles of feminism is rest is political. For us, rest is political. It has to be embedded in everything that we do. So I was talking about rest being political and being embedded into every facet of what we do. The challenge here, and I think I want us to address that, and we have been talking about that. The reason why I keep saying African is because we come from a culture that is beyond, we have our own different cultures. And then on top of that, we have religion. So as African women, we have different cultural norms and traditions and, religious that affect what we can and can't do as women. So even when we talk about rest, even if we go and talk about, Mom, this is how I'm going to gentle parent my kids now. I'm not going to beat them. I'm going to do this. When you go to Shags, and just, because if maybe we have an international audience, God willing, Shags is like basically going back to the upcountry, going back to your rural areas, from the city to the rural areas to visit relatives who are still there. That looks different. So I want us to explore what culture looks like when you talk about. Let's talk about black tax and let's talk about generational trauma. What does that look like in terms of culture and, norms? And let me just ask the question properly. How do cultural norms and gender expectations, go around decision-making, caregiving, the burden of black tax for you as an African firstborn daughter?
Culturally, because you're the firstborn daughter, you're expected to take care of the other children. Like, I used to take deputy mom with a certain level of pride, but then it always used to feel like a burden. And I for the longest time, I didn't understand why. But it's because I grew up parenting my siblings. It was when my mom went to work, you were left with, this must be done, this must be done, this must be done. And then when she comes home, it will be, why have the children not eaten? Why have the children not showered? Why have the children not done this? And you don't realize it until much later. But so who are you? Because if your mother is asking you about the children, where does that leave you as a firstborn daughter? And you start asking, at some point you'll start asking yourself, so am I not a child and am I not your child? But culturally, you were the firstborn daughter, you were expected to step in when your mother is not there. And it's, you can't question that. It's culturally, it's an expectation that you become the deputy mom.
So tell us what that looks like. When you're saying, when your mom is away, does this mean that she's gone to work?
She's gone to work.
You've gone to school, obviously.
Yes.
Or so what happens?
Or even like she's gone to work and it's holiday time. So as a child, what do you want to do? You want to go out and play. Because remember, back then, we never used to have TV. TV used to start at 5 p.m. So you have the outside is your playground. It's your everything. But you're the firstborn daughter. The clothes need to be washed. The house needs to be cleaned. There's dishes to be done. The children need to be fed. So in the middle of your play, the back of your mind, you can't quite play as a child because you have to remember the children need to be fed, the children need to be cleaned, homework needs to be done. And if she comes home and finds these things undone, it is you. It's not the collective. I think there's 4 of us, so we grew up four girls, yeah. But I'm the firstborn, so it's not all of us. It's you. It's a firstborn daughter. The beating will be just you first. She doesn't want to know that. No, when she left, she said, "This one does the dishes. This one." It's you. Why aren't the dishes done? Why are the children not fed?
Since you are a child, you've been a project manager.
Completely. All my life. It's
director of operations.
Okay. And so in some instances, in fact, my siblings will say it's easier for you to tell on them to my mother than to tell on them to me. As in, they're more afraid of me than they are even of their parents.
Interesting.
And then you're like, when it hits you, you're like, but wait, something is wrong with this picture, because aren't I a child as well? And so why am I parenting the other children?
Interesting. So what does it look like as a grown-up? Because when we start talking, we have been saying black tax. What does that definition look like for you as a
grown-up? For me, it's that I always have to know where everybody is. I have to know how everybody is. And my mother will most likely call me to ask me, have you spoken to so-and-so? Are they okay? And then sometimes it wears you down because you're constantly parenting other people. And you kind of feel like there's no space, there's nowhere for you to go for parenting. And then now you also have your own children. So you're like, am I going to carry these ones? Am I carrying these ones first? Which ones am I parenting first? And where is that? Is there even a line? There's no line. You're constantly being a parent.
And you're still expected to be a wife.
And you're still expected to be a wife and be a daughter and go to work and perform.
That sounds so exhausting.
It is exhausting. It is exhausting. And I think especially for our generation, we're getting to the point where we're starting to learn how to say no. I was even having a conversation with a friend of mine but he's a firstborn son. Black tax is sitting on his head so much. He was like, I can't do this anymore. But these people won't even listen. I have no space to express what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. I have so much expectation on my back, but they keep forgetting I have children of my own. And then because we were not allowed to question it, when you say no, then on top of that, you now have to deal with the guilt. First you're guilt tripped, and then you have to live with the guilt, self-guilt, because it now feels like you're failing. And you're doing the wrong thing. But in essence, you're doing the right thing. It's just you are not allowed.
So I've had this firstborn conversation a lot with different people, to the point that now I've started asking different people, what is your experience as a firstborn, as a second middle child, as a lastborn? And then, so for me, the day this hit home for me, and maybe you can let me know if I'm crazy or not. So please do, because then it'd be like, no, that's not right. So I'm a firstborn. There's a big difference between me and my siblings, like a 9-year gap. So I usually say to people that I've gone through stages of what Sabina, I was an only child for a really long time. And then other kids came. For me, it was a bit different because I didn't want to parent those other children. And then as I grew up, because I tell people that I kind of grew up with my parents. And what that looked like was, my mom was young. The way you're saying, I was an experimental child. So she was mothering me as she was learning how to mother.
Yeah.
And that looked different every stage. because as a child you're different, as a toddler you're different, as a teenager you're different, and it was like I was their experiment, and I could see it much later because we had a fraught relationship with my mother until I was much older, and that was because I think we are too similar. So like you said, I saw my mother doing everything, and so I wanted to be that. I wanted to be that black superwoman, whatever syndrome that you have. And then as I grew older, I realized that I become a project manager. So someone told me the other day, actually it was Kibali, he was like, the way you move, because you're so used to black tasks, when someone calls you don't even want to hear. You're a problem solver. You don't even want to hear. So I know you want money. That's what's in your head.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, I can solve your problem. Before you even tell me what it is, hello, hi, how are you? Oh, have you gone to the hospital? What did the doctor say? Did you do this? Did you do that? And so I was telling my friend the other day, I have to learn how to be empathetic and ask the question, would you like me to provide you a solution, or would you just want me to listen? So for me, that's something I'm learning now, because the first thing that comes into my brain is, umeenda hospitali? What did the doctor say? Did you, or you call me and be like, yesterday my boyfriend said, I'm like, did you go to the therapist? Did you do that? That's the first thing that goes into my brain. Now, my husband is a last born, and he has older siblings. So he told me something one day, and he was like, the same thing that I've just told you. That sounds exhausting. That's what he told me. And he said, by the time something, and I hope he won't kill me for saying this, but by the time something trickles down for him to problem solve, there are other people who have been consulted. He won't be the first. By the time he's been consulted first, I don't know what would have happened. Yeah. So it hit me that day. It was a couple of years ago, and I was like, what? What do you mean? You don't get the first phone call for, sasa tutadu. And I'm like, what? For me, it's sasa tutadu, and I already have five things before you even pick up the phone, and I'm like, umeenda kwa garage, umepeleka huyu, umefanya nini? And if it's not someone who will just basically say, stop, listen to my problem first, which is what Kibali was telling me last week. He was like, you have to learn to just first hear. And for him, he also, so we discussed this also last week, and he said, because he deals with someone like me as a firstborn, he's learned to present the problem and solutions.
Because it becomes automatic. When they call you, there's a problem, you best have a solution.
But what the worst case scenario we did? I'm a firstborn, but I don't have solutions actually.
No, he's not a firstborn. Yeah. He's saying because he's used to dealing with firstborns who already have, like, he's already trying to problem solve before you even tell them the problem.
So secondary, you pick it up.
Yes. Yeah, so the second person,
it becomes your problem automatically.
Yeah. So she's like, so he's like, because I know you're going to try and problem solve this problem, I don't want to give you more stress. It's gotten to a point where now I just call you and tell you there's a problem, but I have found 2 solutions for this. So calm down. And it takes getting used to dealing with people like that. So for me, I usually feel like there's levels of how to look at and deal with people. I don't know if you've gone through that.
Me and my friend were discussing that, and she was making fun of me. She was telling me the only reason you're a therapist, it's because you like offering solutions. This thing got into you so much
you became a therapist.
It's actually very serious, because she's like, we were discussing survivor mode and how do you living in survivor mode, levels of friendship, how do you differentiate when to even just come in for somebody and when to say no. Lately I've learned, I got to a point a couple of years ago, I was just like, you can ask me for a solution, I have it, and I just say no, so confidently and smiling. I'm like, what have you tried out, or what do you think, how would you want? But then again, something else, I want to just maybe take it back to whatever she was talking about. Firstborn struggled more with decision making fatigue. Everybody expects you to make decisions, to have the answers, and it's actually a thing until it happened to me, because I could find myself making, and now worst case scenario, be a firstborn, be the firstborn cousin. So that means you have your aunts and uncles depending on you. Have a case whereby maybe you're supposed to give for somebody else as well. You're like, everybody's calling you, do this, fix this, do this. It got to some point, I'm just like, slow down, people. What's the worst? Somebody told me, these people won't die. Do you know these people won't?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I'm just like, I need to sit myself with my education, go back and remind myself, what do you tell people every day for a living? Take care of yourself.
Decision-making fatigue is such a good, I didn't even know it's real.
It's, for me, I know I can't make more than certain decisions in a day. I actually count. I can't make. I actually even pick
right.
I pick my therapy sessions.
Like how? Like
even
like right now, as I'm sitting, I'm wondering if I'm looking at the time, I'm thinking, wamekata waru, wamefanya nini? Like those are the things that
starve. You have to starve. I've learned it my way. Like I actually decide today I've made enough decisions. Let's pick it up tomorrow. And I had to learn because I also learned because of my work. I'm also helping other people, so I have to put my boundaries. So I can only help I can do more than 4 sessions a day. Why can I solve more than no, it's not gonna happen to me. So but there's something people then also black tax is not only financially, it's mentally. It's emotionally. What happens to the kids whereby you had it all, you had a nanny, the basics were taken care of, but your parents are going separation, divorce. You have maybe a terminally ill child. What happens in that case? You have to ensure mtoto hakuanguka nini. Even the basic things whereby you have a toddler in the house and you like watch that kid, make sure they don't fall. You put on the weight of another life as a child. Make sure they don't swallow something. Go play with them. Be mindful they don't jump, they don't fall down. Ideally, a parent has given you their life of a child to go take care of it. What does that even position you in life? So you grow up thinking like, this is my responsibility. Everything, if I mess this up, this is it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
This is why we have...
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that's an actual thing.
It is, because most of the time we grow up like this being held over your shoulders. So you also find that now when it comes to firstborns, there's a lot of disempowerment, and that's what people are struggling with. You'd move around. I do something called identity self-awareness. Hello Self. It's actually called Hello Self, whereby we do identity. Try and learn yourself.
Hello Self.
Yeah, it's a whole program where you get to learn. Say hi to yourself. Like, Nani, relax. Meet you first for the first time.
Yeah.
And most of my clients are firstborns. So for Hello Self, most of my clients are firstborns, simply because simply because I came sat down. Thank God, I feel like maybe I had the luxury of a parent who maybe she even loves to date and told me I should have become a psychologist. For her, my mother did a very, very good job. Lately I learned I was protected from a lot, and I'm able to understand who I am, what don't I like, etc. But you come to learn this firstborn grow up being told, where's the funny even because the siblings are looking over you. You can't do this. You have to do this. You never sat down and anybody asked you, hey, what would you want to become? You have to become a doctor, a lawyer for a family.
Yeah.
If you go become a DJ, what will our...
And that thing of being an example.
Exactly.
I remember once my parents, I don't know what had happened. It was probably something that I'd done. Well, because of having so many boxes and so many do nots, it just got to a point I became a rebel. I was like, because everything is a do not. So I was like, I'm going to do it. See, I'm going to be punished anyway. Let me enjoy it to the max. So one day I was beaten, and I remember my mother saying I needed to be an example, and I'd gotten so tired of being the example. I'm like, please, can let somebody else be the example. So
How old were you?
I was probably 13 or 14. No,
Wow.
somewhere in my teens.
Yeah.
So I've been beaten. I've been told I need to be an example to the others. I was so frustrated and tired at that point. I remember turning around and told my siblings, listen, I am nobody's example. I don't want to be anybody's example. Don't look at me. Don't be like me. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Find somebody else to be an example. And my mother was so furious. I was beaten some
Even
more. But it was tiring. I'm like, why do I have to be the one who has to be an example? Why can't I just be me?
Yeah.
Why do I have to be the perfect one so that everybody else knows what perfection looks like? And at that point, I'm like, I'm tired. This being perfect is too much.
I think I actually understand what you're saying, because I feel for me, and I don't even know and I usually, maybe I need to come for that course of yours. I usually say for me, the break came when my mother, I stopped being an only child, and she then got married and had other children.
She had another project.
Yes, like other than me, but it's not like it, because we were, I say this all the time, I grew up in my grandparents' house, and my grandparents treated me like a princess. And like I had a good upbringing. I was like the last born of that entire house. So I was like, you know, the last born, and then only child of my mother. And then I moved from that to husband and kids, new kids. And then all of a sudden it's, oh, shikilia mtoto, oh, do this for the kids. And I literally, I couldn't. Like, for me, and like you, I completely refused to parent these other kids. I was just like, that's your problem. Those are your kids. I didn't ask for them. I'm like, I'm not going to do it.
Now, question: did it affect the relationship you have with the siblings?
Yes, it did, because I mean, it's fraught. It's not. I wouldn't say like it was like a very, oh, these are my siblings. So when we grew older, and now we started having some sort of relationship. So like I kind of got out of it. Being problem solver has always been how I view myself, in terms of, and it's always been, how do I solve this problem financially? How do I, for me, it's like, kama niko na uwezo, I will do it. And throwing money at the problem has never solved the situation. It always makes it worse. And so I was going to explain about what I think parentification is. And it's literally what you said about deputy mom. And then maybe you can tell us more about hello self and what that looks like. And then you are going to ask me a question about how is my relationship with my sibling.
Yeah.
So before I answer that question, I'm going to just read what parentification is. Parentification is a phenomenon in which a child is forced to take on adult roles and responsibilities, typically beyond their age and developmental stage within their family. This can occur when a child is expected to fulfill caregiving, emotional, or practical roles that are traditionally associated with parents or adult figures. And this can happen in various ways, such as when a child is required to take care of younger siblings, manage household chores, provide emotional support to family members, or assist with financial responsibilities. So, does that sound familiar?
Sounds like my life.
Sounds like my life as well.
It sounds like it's what my life looks like.
That's where we are on this side.
I'm about to say, I'm sorry that happened to you. It was not your fault, but you can work through it. So ideally, that's what purification is. You ideally picked up the roles of parents, be it emotionally, and I was insisting on the emotional part because people tend to forget the emotional, givers of bearing of people. Parentification is also, in a way, being a spouse to your parent, whereby your parent comes and tells you, your mother did, your father did, 1, 2, 3 happened. You see that whole, and in the African setup, people think it's normal. And maybe when your parents are having rivalries and you have to take side, go tell your mother to do this, go tell your father to do this. And I mean, you're just a child. So you have to step up to be the communication person in between that house. And that's what does.
Imagine.
And that mostly happens for the firstborns, because then again, you don't want the marriage to break up. You feel it's like your fault. You don't want these relationships to do 1, 2, 3. So at times you find yourself, you giving in to a lot, and you try to find solutions of things that are not supposed to be, to be your fault. Then also, now that goes back to the question I was asking you about, your siblings' relationship. You find that most firstborns have a strenuous relationship with the firstborn. It could happen both ways, whereby you find the firstborn, because you're educated, now the parents feel like it's you, and most people took up the firstborns as projects. So you were brought up to pick up the role of the parent. This means that study hard, get a career, go to school. Kindly make sure they go back to school. And then that also builds up these younger kids who are just kids per se. Know that you had it all. That's the reason we don't have it at all. So that means it's your responsibility to pour into us, because they poured into you until it was over, which necessarily it's not supposed to be the case. Then there's now the dynamics of the other side of the coin, where the firstborn is parentified, they missed out on opportunities. So what does that build up? Resentment towards now the younger kids. So it's not them looking up to them and being like, you had it all. It's the firstborn feeling like, I couldn't study better. Why? Because I had to take care of you. I couldn't move, get another job. What if I got that job? What would it mean? And I remember, is it Kipali or you were speaking to? And there was that conversation about even some have to hold on their marriages. You know, I can't, if I bring in a family right now, my spouse or my partner might not be supportive of me educating new people. So that means we've had people who have, and I remember my partner actually told me this. I respect our firstborn, though their firstborn is a son. He actually held his marriage to educate us and take us abroad. So that shows the extent.
Okay.
He married later on in life to ensure
So
we went
you went
through.
to school.
Yes.
What is that?
Imagine,
That is
it's
so much
not less.
commitment.
You know, I was speaking to my partner and I realized even things like your sibling needing a roof over their head. As a firstborn, it's automatic. You somewhere to stay.
Yeah.
I'll move for you. Come in and stay. My partner is like,
Crazy.
I don't live with people. I'm like, it's not people, it's your sibling. It's like nobody. But well, unlike me, who's at the top of the food chain, he's at the bottom, he's the second last one. Like, by the time anybody needs to be housed, there's a whole line of other people who have been asked. But being at the top, you're the first person that they ask. So you'll be like, we need, it becomes your problem. This has happened, it becomes your problem. So it's like, for me, I've had to go through therapy to realize I had been parentified all my life. And yet I have other siblings. So like people, it's almost unheard of that somebody will call my second-born sister with a problem. It's Tivarita first, then if it needs to be escalated downwards, then I will do that.
This is so interesting.
And they will not, it's even, we had a situation and one of my friends stepped in, and when she asked one of my sisters, so why aren't you asking your other sister? She was like, she'll say no. My friend came and she was like, you see, I keep telling you, you need to learn how to say no.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to go and ask her because they know.
So why are we afraid to say no? Why?
Because we've never been given the option of saying no.
Yeah.
It's not the option.
it's
Let me cut you short a bit. It's not the option. You see, the way of saying firstborns have been discredited a lot because you had to be an example. Then you've been also disempowered. You were taught, you were never told you can do this. You were told you can't.
You can't.
You're not good enough. You have to be good enough. So you felt that what most firstborns did, they ended up people pleasing.
Yes.
So for you, you knew the only way to get affection in this family, everybody seems to have it all. So what you do, you have to do, it's actually a coping mechanism. You form. So people who are treating you badly have to be nice to them because you've been told a lot of times you're not good enough.
Yeah.
So that's the only, subconsciously you know you're not good enough. So when you're doing something, you have to double check. You have to ensure this person likes you. So you've learned the only way you make your parents happy is when you say yes. And as a child, you want to make them happy. You want your siblings happy. You want the love and affection. So what does, then you know the brain doesn't know now you're no longer a child, now you're into adulthood. So you find yourself, every time you've learned, your brain mastered, how do I get to be accepted? Yes. How do I get the love and affection? Yes.
They're saying they're people pleasers.
No, so okay, it doesn't have to be a firstborn. People who they don't have boundaries to say no are people pleasers because they were parentified in a way. The only way they got affection, they have learned subconsciously. You know, I have to give up my rights. I have to break my rules for me to feel acceptable. Nobody's validating
to be
you
acceptable.
In life. The only time you're validated in life is when you do something or when you say yes. So it becomes a habit wherever you go. Even you can tell your boss, no, it won't take much or an excuse because you've learned, you know, I want to belong. And you find that most of the time they are looking for a connection, a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
So the only way to get that, if you say yes and you get it subconsciously, let's move.
Yeah.
It's I actually agree with you. It's that thing of, because you were at the top, your affection for you came for the firstborn came with conditions. You had to be good enough, you had to have good grades, you had to do the right things, and when you didn't do those things, you were a bad child. My best friend has for longest time ever, she's the last one. She's like, you are such a people pleaser. And I'd look at her, I'm like, what the hell are you even talking about? But going to therapy has shown me, I mean, it's true. It's very hard for me to say no, because I'm like, if I say no, then she's going to think I'm not good enough and she won't like me anymore. So I don't have the space. I don't have the capacity to take on whatever you're asking me for.
Yeah.
But saying no is
I think that's on
unheard
top
of.
of being a people pleaser, which me, I think I'm not. I say no a lot. And this was even before therapy. But I find it hard to say. So it's usually no with a caveat.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just say, yeah, you justify.
Yeah.
You know, you just be like, I don't have money right now, you know, because I had to go pay this, I had to do that. But you just
It can't be
say
just,
no.
I don't have money.
Exactly.
Or
And so,
I'm not able to do it.
But then again, how did we grow up? You know, I actually figured out this last week. There's a difference between over-explaining and accountability. So for me, I thought explaining, even on a personal level, like, this is how I spent this one for free. Then now I'm doing a project with somebody and they're like, you need money for the project. Like, why are you telling me all these stories? Yes, we already spoke about this. Why do you have to get back in? And I thought, I've done other projects and I thought I was told accountability. When you come in, this is how we spent this money. It went here and it went here. But then when I sat down, I'm like, oh, even in years of therapy and doing this whole thing, you still find yourself.
Because even me, accountability is very, very important for me. Like, I usually find that, especially when you give me money, and I think this comes from, you know, being beaten when you're sent to the shop.
Yeah.
When you give me money that's not mine, I will make sure that I count for it every single cent, especially when I know it's not mine. But if you give me money and say, here, spend it how you want, I will spend it, because I know you're not going to ask me for how did I spend it or how do I what, whatever. I don't know if that's a trauma response.
But then again, yours is better. There are people like would still go ahead and tell you, oh, but then you remember the money you got, you know, you M-Pesa'd me. I actually went ahead and did with this with it. But it's because...
But who will send you money? Me, no one sends me money.
Who sends
you money?
You're like, please, I wish somebody could send me money.
Change your friends
no one sends me money.
Change your friends to understand your fast
Actually, I don't know if it's the same with you. No one sends me stuff.
Oh.
There was a day that my friend sent me some cookies, and in my mind I was just like, if this is not my partner, if this is not who, I called everyone but her, because in my mind I was like, it can't be you. You're busy. There's things that you're doing. Blah blah blah. I would never assume that you would be in a position to send me stuff. And so no one sends me stuff. No one sends me money.
I think you need to be intentional with your friendships.
You need to find more last months.
Because all of us are firstborns. So like, you have so many things that are going
with my circles, and we've gotten to the position whereby we speak. They don't talk to me about their issues without, just because I'm a therapist. I'm not your therapist. So fatherly. So we've gotten to a point whereby we can sit down and ask, do you have a position? Can you take me in? Can you listen to me? So that's a yes or a no. So I can say no or yes. But I think again, we were not taught how to be intentional. We didn't have the luxury of choice. So I think that's also something else we can do when growing up. I've learned to do it for myself. So you need people who can just randomly wake up and do things for you. Necessarily, they don't have to be last ones.
Now that I'm learning.
Because also that's a form of self-care, by the way. It makes you feel validated, nice about yourself. Because I've learned you can't be the giver. You need somebody, and I say most of the time, get 3, and I think there's more even now necessary for first ones. Get 3 levels of friendships or people in your life. People above you, people who point to you. You see those people who will just do something grand for you, call you, people who pick up the phone calls and call you, and you're like, how would I ever even call you? Like, it's a bit weird if I ever called you and asked you how you're doing. Get people at your same level. You see, now we're here and you're like, yeah, that happens to me. And now you get people who are lower than you. At least you're able to pick up and tell them, you know, this happens like this, or I did this, or you can do it differently.
But I usually find that very difficult to move out of the circle that you know. I don't know if it's the same with you, because I realized another thing about me, and I don't know if it's a firstborn thing or if it's a whatever thing, but I think it's a trauma response. I have to be in control of whatever. It's not that overt. It's not an overt power. So it used to be so bad that I would walk into a room. I used to do events a long time ago. I'd walk into a room and I'd literally spot things that are not working. And I'd be like, oh my God, this is such a bad event. And the entire time I'd be so upset that things are not. that light is not working properly. Oh my God, who is that?
Why did they
Why
put
is he
that?
dressed? Yeah, why is
Why
he
did
dressed
they
like
put
that?
that thing over there? They need to.
And
I've
that's
even
something.
found myself rearranging things at events where I'm a guest. It's not my event,
Literally.
but it's so much that I can't.
My
You
therapist
do
asked me a
remember
simple
now?
question. She asked me a simple question. So I gave her an example when we were discussing this, and I told her my thing for wanting things to go the way I want them to go is it's making me, whatever that therapy term is or psychology term is, it's what's eating me up. Because I told her it even presents itself in the workplace, and I gave a very specific example. The team was around, and someone asked me in the WhatsApp group, can you recommend places where we can go for dinner? Can you recommend places where we can do this? And for me, in my mind, it was like, you're asking me to help you organize this thing. And I'd be like, that entire time I was so upset, like, guys are late. We're going to be late for this thing. We're going to be this. I'm asking her, did you call the place? Did you book for the appointment? Did you do this? And she's like, yeah. And it was making me angry. Like, and so my therapist asked me, why were you angry? Were you given, was it your responsibility?
No, it isn't.
It isn't. But you asked me. You asked me to help you. So I'm helping.
Yeah.
But
then
let me
again,
help you how I want to help you.
But then again, you find that now these were firstborns disempower other people and they rub your relationships very well. Because this person asked for help, but now you want to. It could have been their shining moment. You see, the moment they wanted to do something, even for you, they wanted to prove to you, I can do it. But what did you do? You went all out
inside,
on
guns blazing, taking over, and making sure everything is done.
And somebody is wondering what's going on. But then again, maybe it's now to subconsciously remember nobody's asking you for perfection. Nobody's asking you to take responsibility. You're not supposed to parent here. Like now having it in the back of your mind. You're not a deputy parent here. These are other adults, and I'm no longer that inner. This is where now working on your inner child comes in. Because you now have to have a conversation with your inner child and be like, you know what, baby girl? We moved past this. This is no longer this. And actually now, can you experience the other part of having things go their way? Because what's the worst case scenario? If the light is not okay, what will it stop anything from happening?
Exactly. So I found a word for it. And this is why I'm saying this is important to be in spaces like this. So whether or not you can afford therapy or, just try and speak to someone about it or watch this podcast. But I have found a word for it. And that's not only you're disempowering your siblings, but infantilizing them. So you're treating them like they were still those same babies that you're trying to parent. So maybe when they're calling you to tell you, I don't have money for rent, they're not asking you, one, to send money. They're not asking, two, for you to go and talk to the landlord. They're not asking you, but you've already done those things already before you even put down the phone. I'm going to call your landlord and I'm going to talk to them about
and
maybe she just wanted
and maybe she just wanted to speak to have a sounding board, but hey,
I think I told you you're very huge in consent around here. So maybe you need to, before you offer somebody help, ask them, how can I help? I also, on a personal level, I struggle with that. Like, you tell me you're sick, but you don't want me to come in hospital, or you don't want me to come cook for you. So how can I show you love? And they're like, no, it's okay. I was just having that. But now, if I don't show up there, then what will happen?
What will happen?
But maybe it's now more of asking you, hey, how do you need me to help, or how can I come in, or how can I support you, or how would you feel supported right now? Then now also learning is
how can you feel supported?
Then learning this is not about me, it's about you. You know, that part of whereby you're not taking up their whole space and emotions. So it's like, how can I support you right now? And the person can say, just give me time, I'll figure it out. If I don't, I'll get back to you. Then you're like, do you want me to follow up, or get back to me? And the person is going to tell you how they would prefer it.
And I think those are so important. Like, honestly, I feel like I've learned so much in therapy, first of all. Just want to say thank you to my therapist. But it's been about understanding those cues. And you can't do that if you're not talking to other people. Because that thing for disempowering, and I'm glad you said it, it's so, you don't realize you're doing it. And literally you move by how you are taught. So that generational...
It's somebody with a problem, they have come to you. You best have a solution, because
If you don't, you're not good enough.
You're not good enough.
Or you're going to be beaten.
Or you're good.
Because
There'll be punishment. There'll be some consequence that will affect you. Yet, it has nothing to do with you.
I love this. I love TikTok is my new jam. So I love how these young people are, and also millennials, finding an opportunity to share, their stories. So there's one I was watching about, not removing the chicken from the fridge. In the morning when your mother leaves and says, remove the chicken from the fridge, I'm going to come back. So she's come back and it's still frozen. How is she going to start cooking and things like that? So that's a chapo. And I was like, it makes so much sense because my mother, when she comes from work. Your mother, when she comes from work, all is there. What's happening? Okay. So as I was saying, when my mom comes from work, later now this is me being an adult thinking about it. When I come from work, I'm tired, but me, I work from home. So there's just a different dynamic of how that looks like. But she's come from work. If she's come by matatu, if she's driven, it's taken her a long time. She's coming back to a home where she's not expecting the man of the home to help her in the kitchen because, the dynamic then was different. And then she also has kids. Or maybe she has a nanny or she doesn't have a nanny, but she'll be tired. So you're thinking the people who should be helping me in this house
are not doing what they're supposed to do.
Doing what they should be doing. So who's going to get the first kichapo?
The one at the top of the food chain.
The person I told you to remove the chicken. Like, honestly. And I saw it so clearly. And I was like, you're being deputized.
Completely.
But you're not doing your job. And why are you not doing your job? Because you're a child.
And it's like I keep saying, a lot of the times I was beaten because I forgot to remove the chicken from the fridge. What was I doing? I was outside playing. I was being a child.
Yeah.
But the chicken from the fridge is not part of. So I'd go out and play and really enjoy being a child. Then you come back home and you're like, oh, shoot. The chicken is still in the fridge.
Another conversation whereby I think our parents never understood we didn't sign up to be born. And most of the time when I tell people that, I'm told you've been a bit rude. But I'm like, no, these are two people who fell in love, did their own thing. I was just a product, I just came by as a product and now I'm supposed to do all these things that you want me to do and take all this responsibility that I didn't sign up for. And now the issue comes in when you say that to the elder generation, they get very, 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 very offended. Like, why are you being disrespectful? But in reality, you're supposed to be the child. You're supposed to be just being a child. Because till even I was telling my younger sister like 2 weeks ago, I'm still my parents' child. I've refused. Because I didn't get to experience that on a personal level, I've refused. I'm not being an adult.
So as we wrap up, as we are trying to wrap up, I have two last questions. One is, do you believe this intergenerational trauma that you're carrying, you're passing it on to your children? Because I know you have generational trauma.
I think, unfortunately, yes. But it's from a lack of knowing that you have trauma. It never occurred to me that I'd been parentified until maybe like a year or two ago. That's when we had a situation and just couldn't take it anymore. And then I went into therapy. And in therapy, I realized this is why. And I look at my daughter, who is also a firstborn, and I'm like, is this why she wanted to go to boarding school? Because there was suddenly another child in the house, and was I making her a parent to her sibling? And now, because I'm conscious about it, it's something that I even have a conversation with her about. And we're getting to the point where we talk about it. I'm like, okay, fine, you are the firstborn, but you're not responsible for your brother. Please understand that. And she's like, but he's my brother. I'm like, yes, he's your brother. Exactly, he's your brother. He's not your child. And to try and fix that. And I'm like, it's the two of you, and I will need you to learn to watch each other's back. But remember, you're both children. I'm the mother. I'm the parent. You're not the parent of either of you. So don't feel that you're obligated to sort out the other person's problems. No, that's not your business. That's not part of what you need to be doing. You're a child. So if they have a problem, they come to me. I'm the adult. I'm the parent here. It's I think by being conscious and being aware that this is what we went through and this is what we have lived through, we can break that cycle.
So first of all, the last word, like literally what you're going to take away from this, go to therapy.
Yes.
We're all traumatized.
We have so much trauma.
Go for therapy. Go talk to someone.
But
Because
I also
honestly,
like to disagree with something that I found. I don't know whether this is common. It's human nature behavior. Is there anything positive we picked up from our parents? Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
A lot of things. How
things.
comes we don't let those things impact us? Because I came for a moment, I came to learn there's a cycle with, you see even how girlfriends go out and talk. Most of the time we're looking to vent, not get solutions.
Yeah.
I think people should be very, you see, once you've realized there's a problem, stop talking about it, act on it. You know.
So I will say something about that. Not disagreeing, but like just as a final note, just not disagreeing, but as human people, or people right now, we have been those firstborn daughters or whatever it is that you are. You have been stifled for so long. Therapy is not a thing that we think of the first time when you're having a traumatic. Some of the experiences, we were talking about birth trauma in another episode, and honestly, you don't know what birth trauma is until someone comes and tells you that was a traumatic experience. And where are you going to find those people? If me and Evarita and three of us are hanging out, we are going to be talking about the same things because those are our experiences. And you're going to move with the knowledge that, okay, maybe this is how life is supposed to be. You know you're tired. You know you're exhausted. You know this is not right. But until someone else from a different worldview comes and tells you, that, my friend, is generational trauma. That is not okay. You need therapy, or your therapist or someone else comes and tells you, that's not cool. And I feel like, and I keep saying it, COVID allowed us to sit and breathe and listen and think. The world kind of stopped for a minute and we were all thrown into this place together. So you will hear a lot more about that, just because we were not hanging out with the same people anymore. Now you're hanging out with your spouse. Now you're hanging out with your partner. Now you're hanging out with your kids and you're like, have I traumatized this child? Such things. So yeah. So just to wrap up, thank you so much for coming. Your expert view was very needed and very important here. And thank you, Varita. I mean, me and you can have this conversation
endlessly.
And that's what Dr. Grace is saying. Don't do that.
Ask yourself, how can we move forward? Okay, yes, we have agreed we're traumatized and we're angry at our parents and whoever is doing this and our triggers. But how do we make ourselves better? That's very, very important. Because you find if you don't go to the point where like, how can we move forward? Tomorrow we'll be catching up on this story. So after that happened, what happened? Do you remember this story? I think we need to accept, like, it's never too late. We can work on this and get out of it. That's my point.
Okay, so thank you. And I think we're going to call this episode Where, because that's how
sometimes it feels. In fact, I was laughing the other day. Somebody sent me a link, and the title, I just burst out laughing. The title of that article was, "Are you happy or are you a firstborn child?" I was like,
you're a firstborn daughter. So
why can't you be? Why does it have to be one or the other? You can't be both.
You can't be both.
It's a reality of being a firstborn daughter. You're either happy or you're firstborn.
But now we learn we can be both.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can we? So we're still going to call it Where?
We can.
Where? You know what happened to me yesterday. So so thank you for coming, and hopefully we're going to continue this conversation another time or off air. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.